pretty directly too, I guess. But I love the countries of Europe. I love all countries.
Now to the United States, where Donald Trump has threatened to impose.
In March 2025, the US slapped tariffs on a series of strategic partners. Germany got furious, Canada called it a direct attack, and the rest of the world started looking for a way out from Washington's shadow. On March 4th, 2025, the Trump administration suddenly imposed a 25% tariff on imported vehicles and auto parts, citing the need to protect domestic manufacturing. It sounded patriotic, but the Wall Street Journal estimated car prices in the US could rise by 10 to 15%. There was no long-term plan, no phased rollout, just a sudden decision. And the market reacted immediately. While American consumers were still trying to understand what had just happened, Germany and Canada responded as if they'd been kicked off the dinner table. Right after the tariff announcement, Chancellor Olaf Scholz spoke out, stating that this policy was wrong and would create nothing but losers. With 30% of its exported vehicles going to the US, German automakers like Volkswagen, BMW and Mercedes weren't worried about America growing stronger. They were worried the global supply chain might break with just one signature. Germany's Industrial Association, VDA, warned that thousands of jobs could vanish if the conflict dragged on. And then Germany delivered a clear message: nobody wins in a trade war. In February 2025, the US increased tariffs by 25% on all Canadian goods except oil and gas. But what shocked the world was Trump's suggestion that Canada could avoid the tariffs. I think they have to become the 51st state. I think we're going to have to keep it for the 51st state. I call him Governor Trudeau. I think it's actually cost him his election. Canada's Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, reacted harshly, accusing the US of trying to interfere with Canada's sovereignty and natural resources. New PM Mark Carney called it a direct attack. From then on, Canada stopped responding with words. They acted, boycotting American goods, pushing cultural independence, and riding a wave of modern nationalism not seen in decades. The EU didn't just speak up, it acted. Olaf Scholz firmly declared Canada was named the official partner of Hanover Industrial Fair 2025, the largest trade event in Europe. At the same time, the CETA agreement between the EU and Canada was revived, paving the way for a trade alliance without the US. Unlike Canada, Mexico stayed silent. They waited. After the US slapped a 25% tariff in March 2025, President Claudia Steinbaum issued a carefully worded response. We will respond selectively at the right time. She called America's justification defamatory and baseless. With a trade volume of $800 billion US per year, Mexico didn't want to pour gasoline on the fire. But make no mistake, when needed, they hit back. If you keep shouting, America is number one, while the world quietly walks away, the real question isn't who's standing with you. It's, is anyone still listening at all? $43 billion US, a number that cannot be ignored. That is the value of the retaliation Canada has just launched, aimed directly at the United States. And Tesla is the very first victim. The 47th President of the United States has officially imposed a 25% tariff on all imported vehicles not produced domestically. This policy is presented as a measure to accelerate the recovery of the domestic auto manufacturing industry, but at the same time, it has triggered significant global tremors. In 2024, the US imported nearly 8 million vehicles, equivalent to over $240 billion in trade. Half of the cars sold in the domestic market came from outside countries. The immediate consequence is clear. Dependence on international supply chains also directly affects American companies themselves. Many analysts have warned that this tariff will increase costs, reduce profits, raise car prices, and slow down consumption. But the White House claims this is a necessary action to end reliance on supply chains stretching from Canada and Mexico to Asia. Just hours after the announcement, GM's stock dropped nearly 8%. Ford lost 3%, and Stellantis, the parent company of Jeep and Chrysler, fell over 4%. But Tesla and Rivian, two US-based electric car makers, saw modest gains. Many investors believe this new policy unintentionally clears the path for Tesla by eliminating rivals that can't overcome the tariff barrier. But is the reality that simple? Canada didn't wait long to respond. Prime Minister Mark Carney declared, "The old relationship we had with the United States, based on deepening integration of our economies and tight security and military cooperation, is over." What exactly the United States does next is unclear. But what is clear is that among those targeted, Tesla was the first to be blacklisted. The Canadian Ministry of Transport froze $43 million US worth of electric vehicle incentives for Tesla. The reason given, Tesla had submitted a flood of rebate claims just before the program ended, raising concerns about the legitimacy of the transactions. Statistics showed that Tesla's filings during this period equated to the sale of 2 vehicles every minute, 24 hours a day. This unusual volume forced the Canadian government to step in and investigate. And it didn't stop there. The Canadian government is now considering excluding Tesla from all future incentive programs while also imposing new tariffs on imported Tesla vehicles, similar to what the US is doing with European and Asian cars. Tesla isn't just under pressure in Canada. In China, its second largest market, sales are plummeting. In Europe, competition is intensifying as brands like Volkswagen, Renault, and Stellantis launch low-cost EV lines. But Tesla's biggest current rival is BYD, the Chinese EV manufacturer. In the third quarter of 2024, BYD surpassed Tesla to become the world's top-selling EV brand. In the fourth quarter, it extended its lead even further. BYD now operates in over 50 countries, from Asia to Latin America, the Middle East to Africa. Meanwhile, Tesla remains focused on the US and select European markets, with no presence in Africa and a very limited presence in Latin America. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Don't take your eyes off the screen if you don't want to miss what comes next. Elon Musk and Donald Trump have just made a shocking statement. The American people must endure economic hardship, but they see it as necessary. So who really pays the price? Millions of American workers. Elon Musk claims that we must live within our means. But in reality, who bears the brunt? The working class suffers while the ultra-rich keep getting wealthier. Trump imposed tariffs on Chinese goods, but who really foots the bill? Not China. It's the American consumers. Higher prices, rising living costs, stagnant wages. Is this what prosperity looks like? Middle class and working Americans are being dragged into an economic downturn they never asked for. The real question is, if this is a necessary strategy, why are ordinary people the ones suffering while billionaires continue to profit? Trump and Musk's policies are wreaking economic havoc. Trump promised to help workers, but in reality, he and Musk are pushing millions of Americans into unemployment. Biden introduced the CHIPS Act, an infrastructure act, reviving domestic manufacturing. But instead of leveraging this, Trump waged a trade war, costing thousands of jobs. Meanwhile, Musk laid off thousands of employees, including many who voted for Trump. Job cuts don't just take away employment, they cost the country billions in lost tax revenue. The IRS loses staff, fewer taxes are collected, the FDA loses staff, drug approvals are delayed. The CFPB loses staff, financial protections are weakened. So who is truly being protected here? Elon Musk and Trump target education, causing massive harm. Millions of American students rely on education grants. But Trump and Musk want to slash the Department of Education's budget. Children in low-income states lose access to quality education, while the children of the wealthy attend elite private schools without concern. This budget cut directly affects over 7 million students who depend on Pell Grants to afford college. Fewer graduates mean a less skilled workforce. How does an economy grow when the next generation is deprived of education? Perhaps the most infuriating fact is that Trump is cutting 880,000 jobs from the Department of Veterans Affairs. These are the very people who fought for the country, yet now they can't even access medical care. A quarter of VA staff are veterans themselves, yet they are being discarded like they don't matter. It's not just the jobs. Funding for veteran support programs is also being slashed. This isn't just about medical care. It's about pushing millions of veterans into financial insecurity. For decades, federal inspectors have exposed corruption and saved taxpayers billions, but Trump fired them all. Now, with no oversight, billions will be lost to waste and fraud. Agencies like the Department of Labor, Department of Defense, and NASA once saved the country hundreds of billions. But now those safeguards are being dismantled. Without accountability, waste increases, corruption thrives, and the American people are left with nothing. Who wins? Who loses? Americans will keep losing jobs. Families who rely on steady income will face more uncertainty, and economic stability will become a privilege only for the wealthy. Education will suffer. Millions of students will lose access to quality learning, making it harder for future generations to succeed. The rich will continue sending their children to elite schools, while the working class struggles to afford basic education. Veterans will be abandoned. Those who risked their lives for the country will wait even longer for medical care, if they receive it at all. The people who defended the nation are now being cast aside as an unnecessary cost. But this is not the whole story. Behind these decisions, a much bigger plan is unfolding. If you want to know what's really happening, stay tuned for the next part. China has just responded strongly to Trump's new tariffs, not only targeting American agricultural products, but also threatening critical high-tech industries and vital minerals. How will these strikes affect the U.S. economy and the global market under Trump's leadership? Let's break it down. China has chosen U.S. agricultural products as the first target in this new trade war. Items like soybeans, corn, chicken, and other agricultural products are now facing heavy tariffs. Agriculture is a strategic sector in the U.S. economy, particularly for the Midwestern states that heavily supported President Trump. The U.S. exported nearly $22 billion worth of soybeans to China in 2024, and these new tariffs could push American farmers into financial crisis, even leading to bankruptcies. If China continues imposing tariffs, the impact won't be limited to farmers. It will ripple through the U.S. economy, affecting everything from goods prices to export values. Markets will be disrupted. Businesses will struggle to maintain supply chains, and consumers will face higher prices. This could lead to a negative spiral, reducing the competitiveness of American industries on the global market. However, agriculture is just the beginning of China's retaliation strategy. They are also targeting high-tech industries and crucial minerals like rare earth elements, which are essential for manufacturing semiconductors and military equipment. If China tightens its control over these exports, the US will face major challenges in maintaining the production of advanced technologies, especially in the defense sector. American tech companies will be forced to contend with higher costs and serious disruptions in supply chains. China could disrupt products like smartphones, computers, and even military gear, slowing production and causing widespread damage to the US economy. If the US cannot find alternative sources, these industries will pay a heavy price. These effects could weaken America's competitiveness in the global tech race, leaving it behind other global powers. Trump has made it clear that he will not back down. The US administration believes these tariffs are necessary to address the trade imbalance and unfair practices from China. However, this also brings significant consequences for the US economy. US markets may face sudden price increases on consumer goods, from smartphones to cars. Companies will struggle to maintain supply chains and lower product prices. High-tech products may become more expensive, directly impacting consumers and potentially pushing the economy into inflation. This could reduce purchasing power, increase pressure on small businesses, and create a cycle of rising prices. Moreover, if this situation continues, the instability in the economy could lead to increased unemployment, affecting consumer spending and slowing the recovery of the US economy. These tariff policies will have a widespread impact on all levels of American society. From consumers to investors, China can still deliver major blows to the US, especially by controlling rare earth minerals. These minerals are crucial for producing semiconductors and military equipment. If China continues to restrict these exports, the US will struggle to maintain the production of cutting-edge technologies, which will hurt both the tech and defense industries. Specifically, American tech companies will have to seek alternative sources, which will be costly and cause major production delays. Over 91 million Americans once voted for him, but by the end of 2024, Donald Trump faces over 30 lawsuits, from financial fraud and tax evasion to inciting a riot. So why do millions still believe in him? Michael Moore has an answer, and it's not for the faint of heart. Well, it's not a proud day for this country. How could it be a proud day when a man who was not elected by the people becomes president of the United States? These were the words veteran filmmaker Michael Moore said live on air. A statement like a razor cutting through years of silence from mainstream media. This wasn't just emotional rhetoric. It was a stripping down of every glamorous layer that had shielded Trump's image for years. The average normal American wants to hear that. They actually believe that we don't like immigrants. We are immigrants. We are all the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren of immigrants, unless you are African American or amongst the first peoples that were here. Moore made it clear, America is a nation of immigrants. By saying this, he completely undercut the divisive anti-immigrant narrative Trump had leaned on in every campaign. According to a 2023 Pew Research survey, 78% of immigrants in the US felt directly offended by Trump's comments about the border. Moore didn't stop there. He compared Trump to Brexit, a spontaneous, reckless decision that cost an entire nation. He warned that America could be next if it doesn't recognize the pattern. Yeah, he's a good man. He's done a good job. Moore described Trump's behavior when under pressure. According to Gallup, 71% of Americans believe Trump never takes personal responsibility, the highest percentage for any US president post-term. Moore called Trump's political career a slow-motion car crash In 2024 alone, Trump faced 91 criminal charges, including campaign abuse, tax fraud, obstruction of federal investigations, and inciting the January 6th riot. Trump isn't facing justice, Moore said. He's using the system to keep performing. But Moore's deepest fear wasn't Trump himself. It was the millions of Americans who still believe he's the only one who can save America. Whether Trump means it or not is kind of irrelevant, because he's saying things to people who are hurting. And that is why this battle is far from over. Don't blink, because what comes next might just shock you.